Peter doing?
I hope he's doing well. He sent me an email. Oh, we're live. Can somebody go on their phone, on their YouTube, and see if I'm showing up in the channel?
Let me go upstairs and get their signal.
Oh, you can just use my Wi-Fi. Oh wait, here it is, live. Okay. Here. Oh wait, here it is, live. Here. Please excuse all the technical difficulties. We were using Google Hangouts to do our live casting, and they've eliminated support for that now on YouTube, so we had to download an encoder and go through a bunch of trouble, and it threw off the original event we created. So here we are now, hopefully. Today we're going to be going over an introduction to growth and criteria for growth. This document is a binding document. It's promulgated. We'll go into all of its details. But I actually want to do a class on it before sending it out to everybody to read. If you've already read it, that's fine. I'm going to talk about some of the context in which the document, why certain things were included in the document, what conversations we're having in the order at the time. And I also want to go over the terminology, because you'll see these bolded terms throughout the document, and it's important to understand why certain terms are used in preference to other terms and what the consequences of those terms being used are. Consequently, as well, I just wanted to point out that we have now gone through the rule, what's required of a knight, and we briefly mentioned this document before, the constitutions, and in praise of the new knighthood. So all the documents that really form the foundation, the documents that you're going to revisit again and again and again throughout your knighthood, we've covered. And now we're going to get into decrees and other things throughout the history of the order, and we're going to do them kind of in order of, I don't want to say order of importance, but the two big ones we're going to go through are this, and then we're also going to look at the Grand Master's letter that was just sent to us a few years ago, and then we'll briefly finish it out with some other minor general councils that they just kind of reaffirm certain things for the knights. Collective responsibility and a collective vision and collective fidelity. As a brotherhood, when the order speaks through its superiors through a vote, it's important to revisit the constitutions. The Grand Master does not vote. These are the preceptors and the other important officers who vote under the guidance of the chaplain, directed and attended by the Grand Master. Once the order throughout the world votes and decides that certain things are going to be the way they are, we are bound by that collective responsibility to see those things through. All right? If we disagree with them or we think the other things should have preference, we need to put those ideas aside. Now, local bodies can add to the ideas. They can even make certain adjustments to be practical, but they can't go directly against these ideas. Okay? And then we need to, if we're all off doing our own thing constantly, then a poor night in Hungary or a poor night in the United States or a poor night in Germany would be so radically different from one another, we couldn't really call ourselves a brotherhood. We wouldn't have a similar flavor. So we need to have a certain vision. And this is what this document more or less does, is it gives a vision of a knight's individual life and what the ebb and flow of a local life of a knight is supposed to be like. The document starts off with the decree, actually it starts off with a dedication to Pope Benedict XVI. But there's a decree from our Grand Master, and it demands that all members of the order read this document, and that they read his letter. So he's already bound us to read it, and he gives the background of it. The general chapter was held in 2002. The previous American preceptor, Dom Charles, was there. There was a 4-year period before that where preceptories and the various bodies throughout the world tried different things and came together and then came back to formulate and put this into law for our order. So, for example, a previous, much earlier decree was the 3%. That's not mentioned in our constitutions or in the rule, but we all have to give 3% of our taxable income, right, net, not gross, to the order, right, or the minimum free offering of 125. That was adopted by a council. It's binding, just as if it was in the Constitution on us. So he's promulgated the rule as of July of 2006, and he says here that we oblige all to obey the criteria and to the fraternal vigilance of local superiors and spiritual counselors. We oblige the faithful application of the criteria, as it will bring to our militia a growth in harmony with its ideals. So in other words, they don't want the order to grow, to accept members, or to get big without conforming to this document. That, we'll talk about the context of that. One of the things it mentions immediately after that is it says, furthermore, the brothers of the Hungarian preceptory will be bound to recite the breviary in the Latin language according to the edition adopted by the order, which is the 62 breviary. So here's the context. The Hungarians were a massive group and they came in at once. And they initially received a dispensation because they were already a brotherhood doing things. They weren't in our order. They initially received a dispensation to say the office in Hungarian because that's what they had been doing. It was understood that they would make the movement over to the Latin eventually on the order side. There was a misunderstanding on the Hungarian side. They thought they were going to get that privilege forever. And that was completely sorted out. But there was pain involved in sorting that out. Okay? So anyway, that's a little bit of context. Also, we had experienced explosive growth in the world. But once again, it was, with laymen, it's so easy for people to join us and then invent their own ideas about what we're about. And go, well, this is what I think knights should do. This is the work that I think knights should go about doing. Or another common thing was priests all the time. It's like, well, I don't think knights should have to say the office in Latin. You should be able to do it in vernacular. And that sounds very arrogant, but we ran into it, and we continue to run into it to this day, where priests who are well-meaning, who are used to having an entire authority over their parish, have a member of their faithful who's normally exceptional, wants to join our brotherhood, and then he doesn't guide him according to our rules or statutes. It's according to what he thinks is a knight. So these are problems, and this document wanted to deal with it. So that's a little bit of the context. Okay, throughout the document, you're going to see a bunch of terms bolded. Confirms. All right, so when we say that in this document, this is confirmed, for example, it says here, the militia confirms, therefore, its commitment to the defense and maintenance of the Latin liturgical tradition as the patrimony of the Church, according to the steadfast teaching of the magisterium and in conformity with that desire which was time and again expressed by the Supreme Pontiff, John Paul II, during his joyful reign. And then it references Ecclesia Dei ad afflicta. Where else does it use the term confirms here? Okay, well, that's the... So confirms just means it states with assurance that a report or fact is true. So if you just see that we're confirming something, that just means that, hey guys, everything we thought was true here, well, it's true, right? We've examined the question, and now we're confirming it. Invites, okay? Hence, the chapter presently invites all the parts of the order to implement this decision on every level and in all places. Okay? So it's saying a formal invites is, I would say a formal request for attendance, but it also means that it's not really giving you freedom. It's saying, we want you to do this, but we're not giving you necessarily a timeline. Like, we're inviting you to come, but you have to go, kind of. Okay? Remembers or reminds means it calls to mind a fact. So here we say, the chapter reminds that a partial recitation of the office can be substituted only due to a real impossibility. In this case, the obligation would be required by, and then it gives what it is, what the substitute is. Here's another one. The official superior can temporarily dispense from this obligation, the office, as long as the common recitation is assured to take place at least once a week or when otherwise possible. Okay? So that's, if you're ever wondering what a superior can do, yes, he can dispense from the office, including the common recitation of the office. But once again, it has to at least take place once a week or when otherwise possible, which is actually a lot stricter. That was envisioning circumstances where the knights could only come together like once a month or once a quarter or whatever. Okay. When it says the chapter, it's stating the ecclesial body of authority. So that means the general chapter. That means the preceptors gathered with the chancellor and the Grand Master. Councils or counseled to, when it says that. For example, it says, counsels that he, the knight, takes Holy Communion at least weekly, and if possible, every time he assists at the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Okay, so we would never tell you to, of course, go to communion if you're not disposed to go to communion. Okay? But we are instructing you with the greatest formality to go to communion if you're disposed to go to communion. All right? So God's law, you only go to communion if you're disposed, right? But we are instructing you to go to communion with the greatest formality that we can without binding you strictly to it. One of the reasons why is because if we were to say to bind you strictly, it would create kind of an odd circumstance if you thought you weren't disposed to go to communion, right? So we don't want to create we can't bind you strictly to do something you can't do. Okay? All right. Grave infidelity. You will see this mentioned twice in this document that I can recall. Once is failing to partially say the office. We say lauds prime terce sex non vespers compline. You don't say matins. And eating meat on Fridays. You can eat meat on a solemnity. It says so in the Code of Canon Law That was a clarification letter sent to us from Italy. Okay? So if it's the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart, that's a first-class solemnity. You can eat meat. If it falls, Christmas falls on a Friday, you can eat meat. Okay? But, and then of course the Friday during the octave of Easter, not during Christmas, during Easter, although the ancient order was allowed to eat it but they also only ate meat 3 times a week, so. It says grave infidelity. What does that mean? It's a fault that rises to the level of a grave matter and the possibility of a mortal sin. Okay, remember our formation class several months ago, it pointed out that if an order says something's grave, that they're highlighting how severe the penalty is. Okay, now you might ask, well, what if I said Vespers only a day, or Compline, Vespers or Compline, but I didn't say the hours? Is that a grave? Okay, it's definitely something you need to go to confession about if you could and you didn't. Is it a grave? It would depend on the circumstances. Right? As novices right now, no, it's not. It's binding on your conscience, but it's not a grave sin because you haven't taken vows yet. You've given a public commitment to live our life, but you haven't taken a vow yet. All right? So it's the nature of the vow that makes it. You're obliged to on your conscience. Okay. Obligatory. All right? So it says here, it's okay. So obligatory must be done bound on obedience. Example is of course the meat. To eat meat on a Friday is a grave injury against not only the church but to the entire order. I believe there's another time obligation is used here. I'm looking for it, of course. And now I'm not. If I run into it, I will let you know. Okay, let's keep going. Cautions. Okay, so acknowledges through experience that there is a particular danger. So when we say in this document, we caution you not to do X, that probably means we have found that when X is done, it creates problems. So we're not saying you can't do X, but we're asking you to use caution in doing X or omitting X or what have you. Here we go. The chapter, therefore, quote, cautions those who have the authority in the militia template not to betray that responsibility which they have, first of all, before God. And the chapter cautions them to use their power of dispensation with great prudence, asking oneself whether the petitioner would truly benefit spiritually from such an exemption. Okay, so it's saying to me that I can't just lightly dispense people from whatever. Okay? By the way, and this makes sense, if you constantly dispense a novice from the office, for example, right, he's not going to be ready ever for his vows. And if he's made a knight, then he's let's say the superior switches, and the new superior won't. One, that'll create bitterness between the relationship. Two, the person won't be prepared. Okay. Here we go. Cautions the knight not to seek dispensation if not for real need. So you can, but you shouldn't. It betrays an ungenerosity of heart. Okay. Commends, highly praises certain actions. That's all it means. When we say we commend something, we're highly praising it. We're not binding you in obedience. We're saying this is good and you should do it. If you can. The chapter commends the initiative approved by the Ministerial Council of instituting a permanent program of aid for Christians of the Holy Land. All right, so the Spaniards also do that. They put money they go around fundraising for Christians in the Holy Land. That's not something that we've ever done here in the United States, but it's commendable that it's done. They also commend here the chapter. Okay, where is it? Okay, I've lost it. Never mind. Advises, not binding in obedience, but recommends. That's the lowest level. It's almost saying suggests. Exhorts. That's a recommendation, but with a greater force. It's one step short of being bound in obedience. So if you're exhorted to do something, concrete example. Moreover, the chapter exhorts the local organs through their competent delegates to support and participate in those activities promoted by other Catholic institutions for the defense of the faith and of the Catholic Church. Okay? So if, for example, I participated in a big thing to try to save a public landmark, Christian landmark, the local church participated in, I participated in it too. All right? That was done on an exhortation, not on penalty of obedience. Okay? Same thing if, I don't know, there was not a lot of, I mean, like if you were to be involved in like doing the petitions out here when we had that anti-abortion state thing, that would have been an exhorted good thing to do, right? But we're not strictly bound to. Exhorts, here's another one. You're exhorted to study the ancient Roman liturgy in order that you might benefit more and more. So you're not bound strictly to read liturgical texts on the liturgy, although you might be because Tom Daniel's the director. But you're exhorted to. Like it's, and this is where when we talk about discerning the will of God in our life, all right, if we're choosing a spiritual book to read and we haven't read anything on the Roman liturgy in a while, all right, if we're trying to figure out what does God want me to read, what will I benefit from? Well, you're exhorted to read on the Roman liturgy. There you go. Maybe you ought to read that. Okay. Entrusts identifies the particular person in authority or responsibility to perform an action. Sometimes, we don't know. Like, is it whose job it is? So, for example, the grand chaplain is supposed to give religious care. Okay. And the head preceptor is the other person. We see we're the ones entrusted with the book list and trying to provide additional formation for knights. It's our responsibility. So another knight, the magistral delegate should not be doing it. The treasurer shouldn't be doing it. The commanders shouldn't be doing it, although they actually have the right to make their own book list for novices. But the head preceptor and the head chaplain should be doing it. In the end of the day, though, things sometimes need doing, and if they're not being done, those are the people you then clear it with. You talk to them about it to get it done. Okay. Strongly recalls. It points to a matter of fact that all should pay close attention to. Okay, so it's saying that, we've mentioned this before, but now we want to mention it again. Invites. It freely offers a choice that can be taken by a knight. Although you have to look at the context, because a few times it says that, and remember this is translated from Italian. A few times it says that, and it's very much demanding it, like the adoption of the old breviary. It's saying it invites everybody to make this decision. And then in other places it says, well, we would like you to do this, but, Evokes a matter of obedience that must be listened to. Let's see. Here we go. The chapter, aware of the fact that the modern Templar is engaged in combat in two fields within oneself, fighting against one's own will, and around oneself, evokes above all an unyielding regimen of obedience, one which is frank, free, and loyal, humble, constant, firm, decisive, and compelling. So it's saying it's a matter of obedience. Wishes, a general will of the council at that time, not binding in obedience, but a collective desire. Here we go. It wishes for greater vitality of the Academy of St. John, which is something that they do in Italy. The chapter wishes for international reunion of the dames. Wishes for greater vitality of the Jacques de Molay Foundation for Templar Works and Charity. most of them don't even really apply to us. Encourages, one step above a wish, that people should have the freedom to move forward on. Okay, so sometimes in our bodies, we're like, well, what should we do about X? And we don't know if we need to ask permission from Italy to do X or write it in a letter. So it says here, for example, that we are encouraged to have our own local book publishing thing. It encourages formative and informative publishing by every organ. So as you know, Dom Jason published a few works. We did not write a letter to Italy saying, can we publish books? They already said we could. The chapter encourages the initiatives which the central and auxiliary organs of the militia templi undertake or desire to undertake in order to carry out spiritual material works of mercy in dealing with the young. We never need to ask permission for an apostolate concerning the young. We never have to ask permission for an apostolate towards Christians in the Holy Land. We never have to ask for permission of doing the reception of pilgrims. There you go. If we wanted to, I mean, that covers so many things. Almost everything that touches on the young. But I don't know. I mean, we should ask permission if we want to start a charismatic prayer group. I think we'll get denied. I'm just letting you know. Yeah. Right. I mean, there's another section here where it says, I don't know. I think I may have already gone over recommends. But encourages and recommends are kind of on an equal playing field. Here's another one. Finally, the checker recommends support be given to the priests who celebrate according to the ancient Roman rite. So we never need to ask permission to help out priests who celebrate the old rite. Now, if you wanted to do stuff to put serious effort into helping new rite communities, that's something that it's not bad, it's not wrong, and it's supporting Catholic things, but that may be something that if it was going to be ongoing, because we use the old rite exclusively, it seems a little schizophrenic. But I mean, you could, it's just something that we would talk to them about. We have done things like that. So anyway. Okay, when it says appreciation, it's a formal approbation of work done, saying that this work was done and we liked it. That's it. So I don't want people going crazy when they read this document. I don't need you writing an essay to me saying, well, it says here that I'm exhorted to go to an Ignatian retreat. Yes, you're exhorted to. But this is going to be very expensive and inconvenient, and there's none that aren't run by heretics near me. Okay, don't go then. All right, that's a concrete example. Right, but we're exhorted to. So I keep my eye peeled for good ones, and if I find out that they're going on, I send out an email. I know the FSSP does some. They would prefer us doing the 4-day Ignatian retreat. That tends to be a very traditional one, and if it's done by a traditional group. I've been on the 3-day Miles Christi one, that's pretty good too. But it is Novus Ordo Mass, so I mean, if you can't go to one of the FSSP, one of the things I would like to do for the novices after your first year of tithes next year is use a little of your tithe money and see if I can throw you at one of those Ignatian retreats. I think it's very good. So we're exhorted to. So not only do you not need to ask permission of Italy to do this, but we positively want us to do this. So if we can make it happen, we should. Okay? I will send out a link to this document. Actually, let me, now that chat is going to be difficult, let me see if I can get it open here and just post a link in the chat window real quick. And then why don't I take questions from the people here? Do you have any questions on terminology? No? Any questions on the document or the context around it?
I have a question.
Okay.
Maybe I missed it.
Okay, that's fine.
Is voluntold valid terminology?
Well, that's our local dialect, voluntold. If I was to characterize voluntold, it would be a a request not made under obedience that will soon become obedience if it's not voluntarily undertaken. So that's what being voluntold is I'm giving you the opportunity to merit charity rather than just the cruel, hard grind of obedience if you're voluntold. You will find that most of the time superiors don't like to directly order you to do something. They will ask, and then they'll plead, and then they'll demand. Here we go. Good. No questions. No questions. All right. Well, I know it's a short class. Here's a link to that document. Please read it cover to cover. And I feel the document's pretty self-explanatory. Please read it cover to cover. And if you do have any questions, we can go over it next time. Next weekend, as you all know, please pray for us. We're going to the ordination of Father Deacon Thomas Mary of the traditional Carmelite hermits, and that's a little bit of a road trip for us. We will have class the next week. It's kind of an easy month for all you guys, in that I'm not asking you to do any real reading other than this document. And then I also am going to be sending out a audiobook assignment. I will also send out, if you want to read it on the computer or buy it. It's called The Path. It's a treatise on humility. It's by Pope Leo XIII. It was written for seminarians. But I do want everybody to listen to it or read it. And then I will introduce our next work. I want to do an introduction on it to just kind of explain what we're hoping to get out of it. I don't even know that I'm going to do classes on it because the work, I think, speaks for itself, but I do want to introduce it and also talk about, I want to wail for 30 minutes and make you listen to it, at least 30 minutes, on how there's a effort even in the church to cheapen knighthood to this level that is silly. I mean, everything masculine is now being brought under the umbrella of being called knightly. And if that's the case, then it becomes empty of its meaning. And this work, I think, establishes that knighthood is a way of living first through one's heart, in what understanding that one possesses, and it makes itself vulnerable to great injury and threat by doing so, right? In that the contrast, the three role, well, there's many roles, but we'll just introduce the basic idea right now. There are those who live for God in the sense of being monastic or clerics, and they remove themselves from certain imminent danger by withdrawing from the world. Not because out of cowardice, but they withdraw from the world to seek after God totally, right, in their interior selves. And they may venture out into it for duty, but they don't live in it. They don't have to, and they don't. Then there are those who, as laymen, which we are too, but they have to spend so much of their life scratching out a living, surviving, tending to the needs of their family or to their neighbors around them, that they have no freedom. They may love God very much in their heart, but they are spoken for. Every minute of their day is spoken for. They have nothing extra because they've, through their circumstances, have given all, or, that's the holy version, or they live a life that is self-interested. They have a lot of me time, and that ain't open to be shared. Then there is knightliness, which is, or at least what we're hoping to do here, right? We're going to talk about there's contrast to two. There's a secular knightliness where It gives oneself entirely to the cause. And it puts its life, it makes its life vulnerable for a cause. And it strives for a cause. All right, that's secular knighthood. It leaves and it's something that's trained for. It's something that's pursued singularly until it's seen through to the end. That's secular knighthood. And then there's what we're trying to do, which is religious knighthood, which is our cause is Christ. We all possess within us something extra that we are willing to give over to Christ. You can't join this order if every minute of your day is spoken for, nor if you're committed to the cloister or right to that in just a 100% pursuit of the interior life, except when one has to maybe do sacramental things for the faithful. That's not possible. We get out, and our cause is Christ, and we make ourselves vulnerable, and we commit our treasure to it, and we also at the same moment fight the interior struggle. Now you might say, hey, no, but there are laymen who do basically the same thing. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, but that's closer to what the knightly struggle is an actual taking on of real violence to be done to oneself in the exterior realm, and it's pursuing it with a full heart. It's not like well, I'm going to avoid anything that might cause trouble. Neither does it look for trouble. Rather, it confronts trouble in the world. Manly. It confronts the trouble in the world in a manly way. And I'm saying this because there's a very well-known Catholic intellectual who recently tried to put all fathers into the realm of knights because they protect their family. Well, that's fine. I mean, it's a good thing to protect your family. It's your duty to protect your family. A knight has to be more than that, though. It has to be more than just protecting his family. I mean, if that's our defense, if the gates are put up right on our picket fences, you've lost. The battle was lost. They're coming for you now. We're supposed to get out and make a battle line before it hits the picket fence. That's what being a knight's about. All right, we live in times of peace, and so oftentimes, there's no barbarians that are coming to raid the church that we raise arms to go defend against at the moment. So we do other things in the meantime. We build roads, and we fight the social struggle, the social, cultural, political, intellectual, and even at times economic struggle that exists for the heart of our church and the heart of our nation. So that's how we fight. Anyway, I'll end it at that. Let's end with a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, one God. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Our Lady, Queen of the Militia,
Pray for us.
Saint Bernard,
Pray for us.
in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, one God.